Welcome back to Studio 5. It's a conversation that takes a lot of courage, and we are jumping in, joining a brave Utah mom who is sharing her husband's struggle with severe depression and anxiety. Angie Webb hopes her voice will help break the silence and the stigma that isolates families coping with mental illness.
My name is Angie Webb, and my family and I are survivors of mental illness. Married for 22 years, we have 4 boys and a daughter. My husband completely adores me. We, had a great marriage. He would do silly things like mow a gigantic heart in the lawn for me when he would mow the lawn on Saturdays. Really involved with the kids. We laugh. He always was strapped to a camera. So we have hundreds of hours of film. 10 years into our marriage, my husband was a successful mortgage broker, owned his own company, but he started to sort of unravel. He was dealing with a severe anxiety and panic disorder. He couldn't come out of the bedroom. He got to the point where he couldn't even hold a conversation with the family. He couldn't make a sandwich. He was in and out of hospitals for 9 months, and some of them as long as 6 weeks. I wanted to call people and say, my husband's in a hospital. I don't know if he's ever coming back. And it felt like he died. We lost everything, and we had to move. We lost our home. I would wake up really early and just cry in the shower till I had to pull it together, go to work, put on my happy face, cry on the way home, and then pull it together and try and be there for the kids. So I got out a piece of paper and took a crayon and wrote, "I choose hope," and stuck it on above my bed so that when I woke up in the morning, it's the first thing I could see. I really believe in taking care of yourself, and my escape is to just do absolutely anything out of doors. Just hiking, biking, road biking, mountain biking, snowshoeing. I love in the wintertime. Just anything outside, and if I have a friend to come with me, the better. Even though the mentally ill person can't get out of bed, you can. And you need people, you need support. Your whole family is suffering. About 2 or 3 days after we came home, and he's sitting on the couch with the kids watching like the Andy Griffith Show or something, and I'm in the bedroom, and I hear this laugh come out of his mouth, and he actually yells from the living room, "Angie, did you hear that? Did you hear what just came out of me?" It was surprising to him. And from that day on, he was healed. He was different. He was better. We really do feel like it was a miracle in our family. He is leading the worship music at our Christian church. He is, working a lot. He's interacting with the kids. He's got that video camera out, filming everybody. And he's my best friend. He's there. I got my spouse back. And I know it doesn't work like that for every situation, but we're just so grateful that we have our dad and husband back.
Wow. Joining me now is Studio 5 contributor and owner of Wasatch Family Therapy, Julie Hanks. I have goosebumps.
I know.
Wow, what a powerful story. And I love that she acknowledged it doesn't work out that way for everybody. So glad it worked out for her family that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about her story as this conversation progresses. But this topic of mental illness has been taboo for so long. And now people like Angie and others are really opening up and addressing the elephant in the room, so to speak. You say that is huge. How come?
It's huge because there is this stigma attached with mental illness. I mean, even the word mental illness, people go, "Oh, what is that?" And I think we've gotten a lot better at talking about kind of general depression, anxiety, and we can joke about it and talk about, "Oh yeah, I'm on medication," but there's severe mental illness that we still do not know what to do with or how to support each other through, and that's why I wanted to do this segment. There was a talk in LDS General Conference last October, Elder Holland's Like a Broken Vessel. So Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, and I just cheered and started crying because I knew what that would mean to my LDS clients, to have a pillar of the community, a religious leader, talk about mental illness and validate it as real and even allude to his own experience struggling. And so I just thought, yes, whenever community leaders speak up, it just takes the stigma and the shame down. And so I was so happy, and I couldn't wait to do this for our show.
From that talk, did you see the floodgates in our community open up in terms of the stigma and the conversation? Did the dialogue change, so to speak?
What changed is I posted some quotes, my favorite quotes on social media.
From his talk.
From his talk, yeah. And people just said, oh, maybe there's a place for me in my church now. Maybe there's, so people who have struggled and felt misunderstood or felt judged or weak or less than, felt like, well, maybe I can be embraced in my faith community.
Well, chances are you know someone who is dealing with mental illness in the community, but you just don't know how to help. This is just the start of our conversation. When we come back, Julie explains what you can do to support a loved one, a neighbor, a friend, anyone you might know or care for who is struggling with mental illness. That conversation continues when we come back.
You don't have to understand this illness to reach out and help people. You don't have to. I don't understand what it's like to go through a cancer treatment, but I can still reach out with compassion and love.
Before the break, we heard from a wife and mother who knows what it's like to love and support someone struggling with mental illness. And she says that's something as simple as a kind word or a phone call from a friend or a neighbor can make that struggle, make that fight easier. Studio 5 contributor Julie Hanks joins me again with advice on what you can do to support a loved one with a mental illness. Here's the thing, Julie, we don't hesitate to jump in if somebody's injured or if somebody has cancer. So why is the response so different, do you think, with something like bipolar disorder or anxiety or depression?
Because it's invisible. Bottom line, we can't see it. We don't see a cast, or we don't see them losing their hair with cancer treatment or have an insulin pump. There's no visible sign. They appear to be healthy. And mental illness is manifest in behavior and thoughts and emotions, which feels like the person. So it's confusing. It's like,
attached to the individual.
Right. It's expressed through behavior, feelings and thoughts and interactions. And so it's often someone might appear odd or kind of off or erratic, and we don't recognize, oh, that's an illness. It's not them.
It's not them behaving badly.
Right, it's harder to separate.
Right.
And they may be behaving badly. Like with bipolar disorder, one of the symptoms during mania is just kind of out of control behavior. Just drinking binges or spending, just kind of crazy, like out of control behavior. But when you're in that state, it's not, that's what feels right to you.
Well, and getting to that diagnosis, can that stigma play a part as well? And I guess, I mean, you can do a blood test to determine other diseases. It's not always that simple,
right? It's not cut and dry, no.
With mental illness, so just narrowing in on that diagnosis can be a challenge and a struggle.
Right, and that's why it's so important in supporting loved ones to encourage them to get treatment and to get a diagnosis, so they know what it is they're dealing with, because it can be so disorienting for family members, like what's going on. And we saw in the story with Angie, who happens to be a dear friend of mine, and I've known Angie and her family for years, and so I'm holding back the tears, reliving their story because I lived it with them. But yet, treatment is so important. And so you know and you understand what's going on, what the symptoms look like, and so you can still love the person and help support them through those symptoms.
We talk about this stigma that surrounds mental illness, and I think no one would deny it's there, but how much of that comes down to education? How important is it to educate yourself about mental illness when someone you love or even just someone you know is going through it?
It's really important, because then you know what the symptoms are and what you're dealing with and how to support them. So if, think about, like, if a loved one had a cancer diagnosis, you might go and look up, okay, what kind of cancer, what's the best treatment? So same thing with mental illness. Read about it, go to credible sources, find out, be involved in the treatment if it's a family member, so you know what it is, and you can help validate and then educate the people around you in how to support your
Do we
loved
have
one.
to be, as we're seeking that information, is it important to be maybe more sensitive in our own question asking? I know I had a friend who had cancer while we're making that comparison, and she said she appreciated and loved the matter-of-fact medical questions people were asking her. It took away from the emotional side of it. Is there some value in just asking those point-blank questions, or is this so sensitive that those questions might just offend further?
You know, it depends on the person.
Sure.
But you can feel that out. Really what is most supportive is for the person who is suffering to know that they're loved, they're valued, and we have a tendency to pull away when we're uncomfortable or we're unsure. And as supportive community members and family members, it's really important to lean forward and ask those questions. How comfortable are you talking about this? You can just ask.
There's a good question. Yeah.
It's like we kind of go, ooh, I don't know what to say.
Right.
Well, just say, I don't know what to say. I don't know much about schizophrenia. So tell, you know, like, I have no idea, but I want you to know that you're loved. And I'm here for you.
Where can you go, speaking of the education, where can you go for good, solid, trusted information?
Well, there's a great resource, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and there's a Utah chapter, and they have some really, really helpful resources. Also, Psych Central is a great website that has just really, really quick summaries on a lot of different mental health disorders, and so that's another great resource.
From what I understand, this path to recovery typically is a long, hard, bumpy road. How can you help navigate the ups and downs that will come, not only to the person who's experiencing the mental illness, but I love how Angie brought a light to her whole family was suffering from this diagnosis.
Right. It's really a family issue, and so it's important to have realistic expectations. So once your loved one has treatment, has a diagnosis, you understand kind of what you're dealing with, then you can have realistic expectations about what you can expect of them. So with Angie's situation, her husband was unable to work, unable to relate to the family for a period of time. You know, so if you don't know that, okay, that's part of the disorder, you might think, oh, well, he just doesn't care about us, or he doesn't love us, or he's just lazy. So you can, once you know what your loved one is dealing with, you can have realistic expectations. Okay, they may not be able to work forever. So what's our plan B? You know, how are we going to support our loved one?
How can you create a healthy environment, not only from a physical safety standpoint, because that can be a concern depending on the diagnosis, but also just that emotional, healthy environment where people around this individual can continue to thrive too?
Brooke, this is the toughest part, and I've had with clients and with friends really difficult conversations, because on the one hand you want to support your loved one, but you can't allow them to hurt family members. And sometimes with certain mental illnesses, there's an aggressive component, or there's maybe an emotionally abusive component, and so it's important to balance that respect for that individual with limits. An example, I remember working with a family who had a young adult child who had a severe mental illness, and they were like, well, you know, we don't want him living in our house if he's going to be destructive to other people. And so I said to the parents, it's okay to say, if you want to live here, you need to stay on your medication and you need to be in weekly therapy. If you don't want to, then you'll need to find something else. And it was so hard for them because they love their son, but they also need to protect themselves and their other family members. So it's so hard. And there's no, like, I don't have the answers, there's no right way, but I hope to just help families know, okay, these are some things to think about, and, you know, get professional help to sort through this, definitely.
And quickly, Julie, just in closing, I love that Angie put that sign above her bed that said, I choose hope. For somebody who feels like that road is so long, I cannot see light at the end of the tunnel, final words. Yeah, reach out for support. Talk to other families who have loved ones with mental illness. You can't just be carrying this alone, and there are support groups and professionals and other people in your community, your neighborhood who've dealt with this. Reach out, speak out, so you get the support to kind of endure whatever road is ahead with you and your loved one. Julie, thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you. We'll be right back.